Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is David. If you like the content that I do and you want to support me, please like and subscribe, or you can follow me on Twitter at FacesIdeas, or you can follow me on the Center Left Radio podcast that I do on Fridays. So this video, we're going to go over Joe Manchin's Axios interview. He did one talking to them. It was not very long interview, like under 10 minutes or so. So we're just going to go over it, and we're going to see what type of things Joe had to say. Okay, so we're going to preface this. So whenever this happened, this was prior to I guess this was as it happened. But to be clear, Joe Manchin did have a negative impact on this bill. It is very clear that he was one of the people who had a negative impact. Yes, ultimately we needed his vote to pass the bill through reconciliation, but he was one of the people responsible for the unemployment being dropped by $100. And he was actually one of the people pushing for it to end earlier. So, yes, he's centrist, but he has some terrible, terrible ideas.
Manchin, these are the Energy Committee chambers. So you hate being called the second most powerful man in Washington, but we have a 50-50 Senate.
Yeah. So this is a weird way to describe it. So yes, technically he is one of the most powerful people in Washington, but if you think about it, every single Democrat has the equal amount of power. The difference is, if you ask Bernie Sanders, would you kill this bill if it wasn't made worse, he would say no. Joe Manchin has said yes. He's made it clear that he would kill this bill to make it worse. So it's not that he alone is just this unbelievably powerful person. He's the one who's willing to hurt people to get what he wants. And that's one of the problems, is that the Democrats who are actively trying to help people wouldn't hold up a bill like this in order to make it worse. Should they have tried to hold it up to make it better? Probably, but they weren't going to get people like Joe Manchin.
You're a Democrat from a state that President Trump won easily. You're willing to stand up to a Democratic president. You are America's deciding vote.
Let me just say, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that Joe Biden is the right person at the right time and in the right place.
But you're willing to stand up to him, and not every Democrat is.
No.
I don't even understand what that means. You're willing to stand up for him. I know many progressives have, look, if your argument is stand up by voting against him, I'm sure there will be bills that the progressives will fight for. This is not the bill that you should have said Joe Manchin is standing up to Joe Biden because he refused to pass it better for American people. Let's be clear. This bill has a lot of good things in it. I'll do another video in a little talking about it. It definitely cuts child poverty in half, but this bill could have been a slam dunk that would have just obliterated the Republican Party had they put some of these things in. Had it actually been $2,000 checks like they had said they would. Had the $15, if the $15 minimum wage had been in this bill, it would have been over. This bill, as it just passed through the House, stood with a 75% approval rating. And this is without the $15 minimum wage. And this is without a single Republican supporting it and all of the garbage that they were saying about it. This bill is incredibly popular. So the idea that Joe Manchin was standing up to Joe Biden against his party is not true. Anytime he stood up to Joe Biden, he made the bill worse. It is worth repeating that every single time.
No, I never from that standpoint. And he understands it. He's the first president we've had that really understood the workings of the Senate since LBJ.
Well, you talk LBJ, so why don't you lean in?
I've seen people who had power and abused it. I've seen people who sought power for the sake of power and destroyed themselves. And I've seen people that seized the moment in time to make a difference and to change things.
Joe Manchin seized the moment for this bill and made it worse. I can't stress that point enough. That as much as they love him, because he's the centrist Democrat, he's willing to reach across the aisle. Every impact Joe Manchin had on this bill made it objectively worse.
There's a lot of your Democratic colleagues, though, that want to do that. They say, you've got power, use it. We're going to use every tool on the table.
This is true. Every time the Republicans have power, they use it immediately. Democrats are always afraid to use power. And when you have the mandate of the people, which you did by winning the election, and your policies are popular by polling margins, which they are, you should use everything in your power to enact those in order to stay in power. It even at the most base level, if you don't care about actually helping people and you're just in it for yourself, pushing these bills is a way to maintain your own power.
I would say this to my friends. You've got power and you want to use it, don't abuse it. And that's exactly what you'll be doing if you throw the filibuster out.
What's the most
Okay, so now they're going to talk about the filibuster. So keep in mind, I have a video on the filibuster. I'll link it in the bottom of this. This passed because there was reconciliation, so it required 50 votes. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act, H.R. 1, which I talked about earlier, will not pass without the filibuster. The Equality Act, H.R. 5, will not pass without changing to the filibuster. The PRO Act, which I just spoke about today, will not pass without the filibuster. Gun control reform will not pass without the filibuster. Legalizing marijuana, unless it's done through executive order, will not. Nothing is that it requires more than Democrats to vote for it will not pass without changing the filibuster.
aggressive, progressive, liberal policy that you agree with, will support, will work for?
Everybody thinks Joe Manchin's not Democrat enough. Climate.
And
To the
climate's now
environment.
your bailiwick as chairman of the
And
Energy
now is
Committee.
my bailiwick, that's right. And climate is real. Climate change is real. And
Think about where we are. Like we're in the year 2021, and a strong statement from a Democrat. Well, it's less from a Democrat, but it would be from a Republican. Is that climate change is real, and that it's an actual threat that we have to deal with. Just wild.
humans have made a tremendous impact on our climate, and we have a tremendous responsibility to fix it. And we can do
Some
that.
of your Republican colleagues won't say that.
Well, I think they know it.
But they won't say it.
Well,
Why?
they need to. I'm going to work on that too. That's another job for me.
We're taking on debt like never before. Are we nearing a point where we will be too big not to fail?
Mike, I get a read. The first thing I get every morning I wake up, one of my staff sends me the national debt every day. We just went over 28 trillion.
Okay. So I'm not well versed. Like my background is not in finances in this way, but I do know there's ways to lessen the debt. There are ways, there are social programs that we could use to help lessen the debt. There are things we can do to make the debt less, and they don't require cutting Social Security and Medicare, which is generally the option, and giving tax cuts to the rich, which, exploded. So prior to the coronavirus pandemic and this massive spending in order to, well, the first one was to help the corporations, and then the second one was, we got to help the people a little bit, and this one is, okay, now we have to actually really take care of the people and help them. The Trump administration was piling on $1 trillion of debt every single year. But now the debt is a big deal because, God forbid, the American people are given a crumb or getting a little bit of assistance.
So it's
2 days ago.
literally top of mind.
Top of my mind every time, okay? My good friend Mitt Romney, we talk about it all the time. How do we save Social Security? How do we save Medicare? These are things that we have to confront and do.
Since that point of view is pretty out of fashion, are you worried that the debt is getting too big not to fail?
I'm worried about a tremendous deep recession that could lead into a depression if we're not careful. All we do is print more money.
The House has passed President Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan. It's now in the Senate. Do you think a single Republican will vote for it?
I think they could. I really do.
Okay, update, because this clearly came out before. The answer is no. No Republican in the House twice or the Senate voted on this bill. They all voted against it. 75% approval rating, 0 Republican support. And this is not a failure by Joe Biden. We know for a fact that the difference between the Republican standard and where Joe Biden was, just because we won the Georgia races, is $1.3 trillion, because the $600 billion was what they were willing to go for. So that's where we know the Republicans were at.
We'd have worked harder in a bipartisan way.
But now it's too late.
But now it's too late. Reconciliation is not a team sport, and it's not a healthy.
This is not true. It is not too late. At any point, these Republicans could have said, you know what? I'm for this bill. The American people support it. This is a good bill. Do I have some problems with it? Sure. I imagine they would have different problems than I would. But at any single point, a Republican could have voted for this bill. Any single point. Reconciliation doesn't say only one party is voting for it. It just says 50 votes are required. You could have more than 50 votes, but you need 50 votes. So it's not too late because you went into reconciliation. The Republicans chose not to help. And I think Chuck Schumer had a really good quote on this last night. He said, look, in 2009, we spent too much time trying to get people like Susan Collins on our side. And it just made the bill worse. And then she went against us anyway. We're not going to make that mistake again. And that's the right thing. You push the policies that are popular and that are going to help people. And when the Republicans all decide that they don't want to help people, it's up to the people to decide who's worth supporting.
Situation, and it's something we should not repeat.
After you swallow the COVID relief plan, President Biden is going to have a second package. You're laughing, but
I don't understand this framing from this guy. What do you mean swallow the COVID relief plan? The American people need relief. There's a reason this is like a must-pass bill. Okay? This is terrible framing for that question.
second package, maybe even bigger, probably focused on infrastructure and energy, climate.
Those are all good. That's all good. But I'm not going to do it through reconciliation. If my Democrats have bought on, my fellow Democrats have bought on that you have no Republican friends that will work in a reasonable manner.
They won't. We just saw it. There is no look. You can say, oh, you know, they don't like this bill because it was too much. Every single Democrat voted for both of Donald Trump's bailout plans, both of them. And this was not because, even though politically it would have helped them more had he not passed them and things had gotten worse. But they did the right thing and voted to help the American people. The Republican Party had the same opportunity, and every single one of them said no. So yes, I do believe that you're not going to have any single Republican. Look, we just saw this earlier in the video. They don't believe in climate change. We saw what happened in Texas. They don't believe in green energy. They use it as a cudgel, even though they're totally wrong. Actually, the Texas thing is even worse because the companies, instead of making it charging reasonable prices, there's going to be a $16 billion overcharge that it looks like the Texas government is going to force on to the taxpayers because of their energy company's failure and almost complete collapse.
I don't subscribe to that, and I am not going to get on a bill that cuts them out completely before we try to make something happen.
Okay, so the key thing to him is saying, I'm not going to cut them out until we try to rejudge them. I look, I don't know on other bills because this was more so urgent of where Joe Manchin would actually kill a bill simply because no Republican would stand up. But I don't know where he would stand on an actual bill that would be effective. I guess it depends on what the actual bill looks like. But this is a very interesting point. He said, I will not do it if it cuts them out completely. So if you give them an opportunity and they give you a garbage bill, are you just going to settle for that for bipartisanship? I think this is something the Democrats are starting to learn, and I'm not sure Joe Manchin's figured it out. We, the American people, do not care how a bill is passed. We don't care. We don't care if it's 60 votes. We don't care if it's 50 votes. All we care about is, does it help us? And if you're willing to give us a garbage bill in order to get the other side involved, you're going to face consequences for that more than if you have a bill that is popular and helps American people, and one side is absolutely saying it doesn't matter what's in this bill, we're voting against you.
Insist on 60 votes.
To get on to reconciliation, you have to vote to proceed. I have told you.
I also don't even know if an infrastructure bill would fall under reconciliation unless they sliced it up. That's something for later.
I will not vote to proceed until we try. Now, here's the thing, though. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong. But if we try to work and sit down through this committee and they have their input to the...
Here's the thing I don't understand. Joe Manchin was there for Obama. He was there. They didn't reach out to you during Trump either. So I don't understand why you think they're suddenly going to reach across the aisle to help you.
Bill, we have amendments to the bill. We work on a piece. Infrastructure.
So you believe that you can get 10 Republicans on an infrastructure bill?
I sure do. If we do it right.
So you're optimistic?
I'm just saying 50-50 gives you an absolute opportunity to make the place work.
Would you support any kind of filibuster reform?
The only thing I have even considered or thought of is basically some through the history, how it used to be.
Making them talk.
There should be pain to a filibuster.
I would really love if this guy had followed that up and asked him about separating the bills into different parts for reconciliation, like voting rights is a special thing, or Medicare is a special thing, or about, because this was proposed in '95, about having the filibuster. The longer it goes on, the less votes you need. I wish he had asked him that question.
And
There should be pain.
And what is
Maybe
the
the
pain?
talking, basically. You
You got to
have to-
read the phone book or whatever.
That's
right?
it. Do whatever, but make sure you has a little bit of pain. Just don't say, well, no, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote for that. And,
What other pain?
well, you have the pain basically as the filibuster, talking filibuster, they've talked before. Some of the rules could be changed a little bit, but not to the point where just a simple majority rules.
Okay, look, this is a significantly better answer than the one where he said, hell no, screw you, I'm not changing the filibuster. So it appears, so my ultimate hope was Joe Biden said to him, okay, we're going to give you the $300 unemployment insurance, but you're going to have to give us some type of filibuster reform. And that's my hope. And that he actually comes around to some type of this. Then we have to figure out what to do about cinema. But I think if you can get Manchin, you can get cinema.
That's all.
How often do you talk to President Biden?
As much as needed. I'm not going to bother him, and he'll call me sometimes, and we have a talk. We have a great relationship. I have all the admiration and respect for this man. I
He
really do.
calls your cell phone or?
Yeah, they call me. They can find me. You know, President of the United States does not have trouble of finding.
But you
any-
talk to him once a week or once a month?
Well, sometimes twice a week. Sometimes maybe once every month or every other.
How often do you talk to moderate Republican colleagues, the difference makers, who could support pieces?
Okay, so this is a misnomer. There are no moderate Republican colleagues. There's the perception that they are moderate Republicans, like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski kind of is. Susan Collins, Mitt Romney are considered moderate Republicans. But when it comes down to it, they're almost always going to vote for the party lines. It even came down to this in this bill. They all voted against it. So there really aren't moderate Republicans.
Of the Biden agenda?
Daily, hourly, all the time.
Is President Biden being as bipartisan as he said he would be?
He wants to be. I truly, in his heart of hearts, he wants to.
What's stopping?
Well, the bottom line, he has to get some things done. So he's got to hit the ground running. I understood that.
Chairman Manchin, as we say goodbye, when you're in D.C.,
I wish that he had gone into that a little bit more, because he's right. Look, this idea that Joe Biden isn't bipartisan enough is stupid, because the Republicans just sat there and spat in his face. He's like, look, I want to work with you, and you gave me garbage. They've had chances to vote for this. They put amendments out for this bill. Some of them made it into the bill, and then they all said no anyway. So yeah, Joe Manchin is right on this. Joe Biden had to do some things in order to get this bill done, and that's what it took.
you live on a houseboat. I promise not to do my John Denver, but
This is also the other thing. Joe Manchin is very, very wealthy. So him living on a houseboat is one thing, but this is just more infuriating by the fact that he killed the minimum wage.
it's called
Almost heaven,
West Virginia.
Mountain Mama.
All right, we don't have to cover the rest of this. It's just nonsense. Okay, so that was an interesting interview. There were some things in it that I liked. There were some things in it that I didn't like. I like the filibuster stuff that he's talking about. In my filibuster video, I said that's at least one of the things that we can talk about. So it looks like he is open to some type of filibuster reform. That would be good. I'd be okay with some type of filibuster reform. I'd be very interested in what his thoughts are on an infrastructure and climate change bill that he would find acceptable, that Republicans would also find acceptable. I can't imagine that would be super effective, but we'll see. So that was an interesting interview. If you like the content that I do, please like and subscribe. Please follow me at Twitter @FacesIdeas, and I'll see you in the next one.